the first thing you need to do is do the research.
Welcome back to the Wild Business Growth Podcast presented by Hippo Direct. This is your place to hear from a new entrepreneur or innovator every single Wednesday morning who's turning wild ideas into wild growth. I'm your host, Max Branstetter, digital marketing Dude at Hippo Direct, and you can reach me at max@hippodirect.com for help using your podcast as a marketing tool. This is episode number 87, and today's guest is Molly Pittman. She is the Facebook ads guru, expert, all things, that sound like that. And she's spent over $14 million in media buying in her career. She has the typical journey from small town Kentucky to Amsterdam. And she is the CEO of Smart Marketer and previously served as a VP of marketing at Digital Marketer. Let's go to the pit, man. Sheesh. Enjoy the show. Alrighty, we are here with the guru of all things digital, paid media buying, etc., Molly Pittman. How you doing today, Molly?
Hey, Max, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Thank you for joining. We're going to get into a lot about how you can grow your business through Facebook ads and Instagram ads and beyond. So really focus on a lot of the paid things out there in the world, which you are the expert on. But before we get to that, I know you started off your career kind of with a couple of different roles that dealt with alcohol. So
it's very true.
Yeah. My question is not how you got those roles, but rather how come you left those worlds of alcohol?
Whoa. Okay. Great question. Very entertaining question. So yeah, I did start out during college as a bartender, and then I worked at a bourbon distillery. I grew up in Kentucky, so I worked at Buffalo Trace as sort of a marketing associate, we called it. But honestly, it was more about the time in my life. So that was during college. That sort of interest reflected my lifestyle in the moment. And I think that I realized that it maybe wasn't something I was interested in enough to like dedicate my whole career to. And then of course, as you graduate college and kind of are birthed into the world, that forces different decision making. So I decided to move to Austin. And when I did move to Austin, I was bartending to pay the bills. And I was applying for jobs like, maybe doing sales for a distributor or something of that nature. But I didn't have much experience. So I wasn't getting any callbacks, and, the universe kind of took me in a different direction. So that's really how that happened. But I thoroughly enjoyed working in that industry. And I feel like a lot of like that really helped just jumpstart kind of where I am now.
So the universe just said, you know what? Molly's having too much fun. We need to detox her.
Probably something like that. Purification needed.
But that's really cool. So you have the typical Kentucky to Austin to Amsterdam journey. So,
right.
So what would you, when you think back on those days in bartending and working at the distillery, shout out Buffalo Trace, what can you take from that? Like what did you learn from those roles that you see still impacting how effective you are in your job today?
Ooh, definitely listening to the customer, understanding the customer. Part of my job, I was basically an intern, and a big part of my job was Buffalo Trace has what I would call like a customer listening tool. I can't remember exactly what it was called. There are a few of them on the market where, for example, every day I would get an email that aggregated like every media source or every time Buffalo Trace or one of the products was mentioned on the internet or in a magazine, anything that had a digital footprint. And so part of my job was to filter through that, pick what I thought was significant, and pass that information on to the people that were actually doing the marketing. So even though this was very manual and it was online, but it was still, this was like 10 plus years ago now, just learning that how important it was to listen to the customer and their feedback and what people are saying about your brand, or just what your market is discussing, the conversation that's going on in their head, as Dan Kennedy says, because that is the context that you need to then do the marketing. If you don't
Right.
understand, then you can't really meet them where they are. So that was a really good lesson. And also just working with people, that I would say is the most important thing to me in business, is just my relationship with the people that I work with, and, us having similar values and really working towards, similar goals, and just really caring for one another. Like, we spend so much time with the people we work with, probably even more than our family. So that's been a huge optimization in my life. And I think that really started there, and just like, learning how to even be a part of a company culture, that is a learned behavior. So yeah, lots
Yeah,
to take away from that time in my life, for sure.
it is. And speaking from a family business, it's kind of a tie between working with my family and how much time I spend with people I work with. I know that came out, just rolled off the tongue, but
Yeah.
listening and knowing who your customers are and knowing your team around you is really important and applies to whatever you're doing. And then there's something about this digital marketing world that kind of sucked you in, pulled you in. So what was your first exposure to even realizing that you could have a job or role in digital marketing, and what was so appealing about that?
Yeah, so I was a business marketing major. So I did have interest in this industry, but I'd really never even thought about digital. I mean, that's still not taught, still now in universities, really, or at least not up to date, actionable information.
No, I mean, I'm sure there's great courses on MySpace.
Yeah, right. Right. And so I didn't even know this world existed, I guess is the best way for me to put it. So while I was bartending and looking for, quote unquote, a full time position and kind of a career path, I came across an ad on Craigslist that really called to me. And it was like for a paid marketing intern, and they were going to hire 15 people at one time. And then after like a 2 to 3 month process, they were going to hire a few people who like really stood out as full-time positions in these super entrepreneurial companies. And it was all about digital marketing. And like, of course, the ad copy was really good in the ad. It very much called to me. And so I submitted my resume. I had an interview the next day. And then that's sort of how I was catapulted into this world. So that was about a little over 8 years ago now.
Holy cow. And it's, you could tell you have a passion for the ad space because you recognize how good the ad copy was in the ad for that job. So you were, before you even had that role.
Well, in the moment I didn't. I just felt like very called to it. And now when I look back, I'm like, duh, that was written by really good marketers. So of course they knew, how
Uh,
to speak to me. And I was really buying into the opportunity. I wanted something full time, but I didn't know what I wanted. So this experience of getting to test something out and there be like maybe even a competitive aspect, but also I'm getting to work in this group and learn. It's like, this can't go wrong. So I just sensed the opportunity. And luckily, that's the direction that I went.
and you were one of the digital marketers and a VP at Digital Marketer. What's the biggest thing you take away from that experience before you went off more on your own?
Oh, wow. I mean, it's hard to pick one thing. It was kind of everything. It was like, I mean, education, right? That not only the, I feel like I got hundreds of years of wisdom from that experience is the best way
Wow.
I can put it.
If every experience had 100 years in it, that would be something else. Like,
Right. Well, and it's because I got to learn with some of the best people like Ryan Dice and, all the guys there at Digital Marketer, like they're some of the best marketers in the world. And so they were able to distill that information down to us. And so, the passing of information is very powerful. And like, I'm really grateful for that experience. And, I got to learn how to lead a team and grow a business. And I, got insight to all of our students, which is an experience in its own, and all of the different businesses that Ryan and those guys own. So it did feel like hundreds of years just packed into these short few years, just because of the amount that was going on, but also the sandbox to get to test and try new things. And, digital marketer is very much a lab that produces information about what's working and what's not working. And to be able to just test and try new things, it allowed me to acquire this skill set very quickly, because it was a balance of consuming knowledge and watching other people's experience and learning from them, and then getting to apply it on my own. And to me, that's really how you do build a solid skill set, is a balance of both of those things.
Well, we are going to get into the sandbox of growing your business through Facebook ads. And there's plenty we can discuss here, but I want to dive into, to start off, more of let's view it kind of more of a scenario or simulation here. Or if I'm a business owner who knows what Facebook ads are, but is always wondering what's the best practices, what's the thing to do here. There's a lot of different elements here. So let's start off in a more of a broad sense. What would you say is the most important thing to keep in mind when you are setting up a Facebook ads campaign?
Ooh, okay. I have to pick one.
Yes. And then we'll promptly end the interview right after. No.
Yeah. The most important aspect is the offer. It's whatever you are asking them to do, whether it's buying your product, buying your service, opting in for a webinar. It depends on your business and kind of at what step you are in the customer journey. But the most important thing is the offer. And is that something that the people you're speaking to actually want? And is it positioned in a way where they can understand the value? That's the most important thing with advertising in general, but specifically Facebook ads. People think it's more tactical when really it's about the basic marketing assets being very strong.
And by offer, do you mean like the specific, I know it sounds funny, but like the specific thing you're offering, or are you saying more of how it comes through in the copy and the creative, like what people are actually seeing?
Yeah, it's kind of both, because for me, an offer is, yes, it's the product or service you're selling or the thing that you're asking them to do, but it's also the context and the hook layered onto it, that understanding of why that person would want to. I call that kind of a hook. So, I think that it's really both things. It's also the pricing. It's the way it's all positioned. But mostly when I see a Facebook campaign fail, the first thing I look at is the offer. And usually it's just not strong enough. Or if it's strong enough, it's not being portrayed in a way that actually catches the audience's attention.
So how do you capture attention? I mean, you're competing to get in front of the eyeballs of millions or billions, or tens or dozens, depending on your target market. But what can you do to create that hook and have it come through in your ads, as opposed to just being something that's super ignorable?
Yeah, I mean, first is just taking the time to establish those. Most people still nowadays just slap up a Facebook ad and they expect to just show up in the news feed and say, "Hey, my product or service is great. It exists. Buy it."
That would be
With
nice.
and it's just very generic. And it's like, it doesn't work this way. This is a social platform. So, first is just taking the time to actually establish the strategy. And there are many of ways to do that, but it's usually focusing around the avatars that you're wanting to reach, going deep on the targeting, where are they hanging out on Facebook, and making sure that in terms of your copy and your creative and the overall hook or the reason someone should take the action, those are aligned. And when that happens is when you're really able to scale. So, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Sorry, I was just working on my next ad. So that's clear. Like, I think that's a good place to start, because you're saying the hook or the offer is most important, and that's obviously what people see, and it needs to be it needs to come through in what your target audience sees. Of the other different elements of of Facebook ads campaign. So let's say, there's targeting, there's how much you spend, there's the different elements of how you set up ad frequency and who you're reaching. What are those other elements would you place the most importance on?
Yeah, so offer is the most important. The second most important would be the avatars and your targeting. So establishing really the profiles of the types of humans that would be most interested in your offer. And then, specifically to Facebook ads, doing the research to try to find interests inside of the platform that you don't think the competition has taken time to find, so that you can best get in front of that audience. So, second is avatar and the targeting.
And when you say Avatar, you mean the movie franchise, correct?
Of course, I love that movie.
Yeah, James Cameron. So let's dive into there for a little bit. So on the avatar or targeting side, I mean, I think most people know by now that you can't just blast an ad broadly to everyone and expect there to be a good turnout or a good or for it to be well received because you're just not focused enough with your target. How much time would you say goes into really building that avatar or refining that your target audience for a specific campaign?
It really depends on how well I already kind of know that avatar in my own life, Like if, for example, if I'm targeting digital marketers, it's quick and easy because I am that avatar. But for example, I just went deep into like trying to reach women over the age of 50 and I'm not that person. So I spent probably 5 to 10 hours doing research, on that individual avatar.
And it's a tough thing because I think it's like I've always thought of targeting as like not the most sexy thing, but it's like super important.
Yeah, because you could build an awesome campaign and put it in front of the wrong people.
Yeah, which is not
Or
fun.
it's like targeting is really what most affects your cost because the auction, how you rank in Facebook's auction, the higher you rank, the cheaper the cost, the lower you rank, the lower the cost. And you are in that auction ranked against the people that are targeting those same interests, right? Or those same audiences. So if you are willing to go deep and find ones that other people aren't using, like it's not only just important to get in front of the right people, but it's also really important in terms of the economics of your campaign.
And what tips can you share on that targeting standpoint? Like what are some good things to always keep in mind when you're refining your
Yeah.
target?
I mean, the most important thing with targeting is, of course, cold traffic, trying to reach people when you're trying to reach people that have never heard of your brand before. And the best way to do that is through interest targeting. And Facebook has tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of interests in that detailed targeting box that there's no one list of them anywhere, right? Like you can just start typing in words and seeing what pops up. So that is why this is such a huge opportunity because the first thing you need to do is do the research. So figure out where is that person hanging out on the internet? What brands do they follow? What are they consuming? What blogs do they read? Like go deep into the psyche of this avatar and then see which of those things show up as interests inside of Facebook because most people aren't doing that work, right? Most people are, trying to sell fishing rods and they go in and they just select the interest that is fishing. And it's like,
Ah, you caught me.
cool. You and every other person trying to reach this audience is also competing for this same target. So,
The
you
fishing
know,
rod market's crazy, I tell you.
I bet. So yeah, that's just a quick example.
Yeah, but that spurred some more spawned some more questions. So, in terms of the interest, because there's kind of always that debate. I think a lot of people say now when you're using your own data or retargeting through Facebook, that's can be the best way to go. But there are so many options from the interest targeting standpoint. How many different interests would you layer on there? Like, is there a good number to go by?
It depends. I go more for potential audience size of the ad set. That's more important.
Mm.
So that ranges depending on what I'm doing. But, I just have a Google Doc that's got all the interests written out that I'm going to use. And as I start to build my campaign and I hop in the first ad set, I just start going down the list and I input as many interests that I need to hit that potential audience size I'm looking for. And sometimes that's one, sometimes that's 15, if they're a bunch of small ones. And that's totally okay. And then, once I kind of hit that audience size, I just duplicate and I move on to the next one and keep going down my list.
And it's kind of a tough thing because I know there's not an exact number of interests that are like, it's like, it would be magical if it was like, you have to do 8 interests and it has to be this, and this, and then you are set.
Yeah.
But obviously it's not that way. How do you get a sense though, if your projected audience is too small, too narrow, or too big? How do you get a sense of that?
Well, it depends on what type of campaign I'm setting up. If I'm more in scale mode and I'm using CBO, then each of my ad sets will be about 5 to 30 million people in each of them if I'm able to sell worldwide and I'm not confined to like a local business or just one state or something like that. Obviously, your numbers will be smaller if you are. And if I'm more in test mode and I'm using like ad copy and creative and things that I haven't used before, and I'm still able to, I'll set budgets at the ad set level. And then in that case, since I'm testing, I need to give Facebook kind of a smaller pool to play in. So I go more for like 3 to 5 million people for each ad set. So that just gives you some options, and that's all for cold traffic targeting.
Gotcha. Okay. And then how does it look on the hot side, which I guess would be the more retargeting, right?
Well, obviously, that's different because you're going to have much smaller audience sizes when you're retargeting. And you're also generally going to be using different objectives when you're retargeting, which objectives really play in, like objectives and audience sizes, like have a lot to do with one another. Like, for example, it can be really hard to optimize for purchases to an audience size less than 5,000 people because the action just doesn't happen frequently enough for Facebook to know what to do in that scenario. So, for retargeting, you kind of got to kind of work with what you have. But I have tended to do more of what I call squishing, which is instead of having like a really complicated retargeting setup where I've got 10 different campaigns, all retargeting really small audience sizes based off of each step of my funnel, I'm finding better results actually lumping those in more to just one or a few campaigns so that I can get my audience sizes a little bit larger. And Facebook seems to digest that better and is able to optimize those campaigns better. So in the end, it seems to bring us better returns.
Well, that's great to hear. And squishing, did you coin that? Is that your term?
I think so. We
All
call
right.
it
We need to trademark it.
Ezra, my business partner, and I call it fishing and squishing. It's
That's what
ridiculous.
to live by. All right. Yeah, we're getting
Totally.
a lot of play in the fishing rod market today. So I'd love to go through some examples of campaigns that you've worked with personally or have seen that have gotten really, really good return. And obviously the objectives can and goals change from campaign to campaign. But when you think back to, your 8 years plus of working with Facebook ads and paid buying, what are some specific campaigns that jump to mind and what did they do really well? And it's up to you if you want to share the exact client or just say, company A
Yeah.
did this, no pressure.
Yeah. So one is probably the like best campaign I've ever seen in my career. I didn't actually run it. I like helped a bit with it, but it's Boom by Cindy Joseph. So Ezra Firestone, my business partner, this is a brand that he started that is a cosmetic company for women over the age of 50. And they've been buying media consistently the last 8 or so years and have scaled the business very nicely. And this last 4 to 6 weeks, we ran a campaign where we were optimizing for purchases. We were going after cold traffic, so completely new people to the brand. We were sending traffic to a pre-sale article, which was 5 makeup tips for women over the age of 50. So it really calls out the audience, gives them a little bit of value first, and then pitches our signature product. But we're still optimizing for purchases here because this is a very direct response funnel. And so this particular campaign, we spent 1.5 million on, and the return was 2.5 million, which is just a
Wow.
really incredible scale. So we were able to acquire 35,000 brand new customers at a profit, which is very exciting. So there are a few reasons this worked well. I mean, the first is that we've been at this for a long time and we've got experience, and like they've run ads in this account, like I said, for 8 years. They really know their audience. They gave value first with the pre-sale article. It transitioned very nicely to pitch their product. Most of the ads are user-generated content. So the actual avatar, women over the age of 50 with, maybe gray hair that look their age in a beautiful way, sharing their experience with the product and like going into some, deep reasons why they're interested in the product. And, really like showing up and not looking like an ad, right? Being pretty native. And these ads have worked so well. And then you layer on, I went really deep with their interest targeting. This is the one I said I spent maybe 5 to 10 hours on. I was talking to my mom. I mean, we've got hundreds of interests that we found. And yeah, it was just the perfect storm. So that has been a really good campaign. And right now, anytime, you guys can always Google Facebook ads library and just type in "Boom" by Cindy Joseph and select that Facebook page and just check out the ads that we're running over there, because we're always iterating.
Well, that campaign certainly went boom. That's incredible. There's some serious irony in the fact that the best ads, as you said, look nothing like ads. Like you gotta hide the ad effect.
Yeah. I mean, on social platforms, that's the game, right? And that's what most people are missing. I would still say 90% of the ads I see today look like ads, and it's crazy to me.
Yeah, especially when it's like a giant picture of a fishing rod. But so that's an example of a mega campaign where you're literally the campaign, you're spending millions as part of it. How often do you work with brands that are spending that much on Facebook and digital ads versus the more smaller businesses or smaller amounts?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a part of a lot of projects because I'd like to keep a wide scope and understanding about how this whole industry, I guess you would call it, like how that's being applied in business. So, for example, I just got off of a call for a project that I work on that's for LASIK doctors. And
Hmm.
it's a friend of mine who has a marketing agency for LASIK doctors. And, sometimes we're spending maybe $1,000 to $5,000 a month, but we're driving maybe, 50 to 70 new consultations to their office, which is all they need. That's all they can handle. But it's still a significant impact on their business. So you don't have to spend a lot to get great results or to grow a business via these paid channels. It's just when we use big numbers, people tend to pay more of attention.
Right. Yeah. It's like Facebook enjoys the higher spend more or something.
Which I will like, not going to go down the rabbit hole, but I don't think it has anything to do with Facebook enjoying the spend. I think it's like just sort of how the digital marketing industry has come about. And because it does get attention, that is what you hear most educators or quote unquote gurus using as like numbers based proof, which, I'm guilty of this too, because it does get attention, right? But
Right.
it's not everything that matters, right? Or that's not, anyways, you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. No, go on. No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, it's so true. On that big versus small note, what is the biggest difference you see in working with campaigns for brands that are willing to spend maybe 100 or less a month versus those that are spending the tens, hundreds of thousands or millions? Like besides the spend, how do the campaigns differ?
Well, I mean, first off, a lot of that has to do with market size. Like, a hairdresser in my hometown of Danville, Kentucky, like, she probably couldn't spend more than $100 a month without saturating all of that city 8 times,
Right.
a week.
You were one of one people from there.
Exactly. So, budget is a reflection of market size or who you are trying to reach in that moment. Also, you have to factor in the simplicity of, for example, running Facebook ads for a local business is just a lot simpler than an online e-commerce business. Like inside a Boom's ad account, we probably have 20 campaigns running at a time because that's how many steps there are in that journey. Whereas with a local business and LASIK, we might only have 2 or 3 because we're doing a simple lead gen activity and, maybe some retargeting ads. So yeah, I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. Every time you say that, it does make sense. So I think it's just it's a figment of your imagination. In terms of other changes, what would you say is the biggest? It could be a feature that Facebook rolled out, or maybe it's a change in terms of privacy. What's kind of the biggest change on the more background side of things with how ads are set up or how they run that has happened over the course of the last several years that has made the biggest impact on ads?
Yeah, I mean, the first is Facebook just maturing as a platform in terms of, even if you just look at the ad algorithm and how that side of the product works, every day that goes by, there are thousands of people working to make it smarter and to make it easier to set up ads and more intuitive. So you have the actual product, the machine learning that's happening every day. I mean, it's literally getting smarter. The machine is teaching itself. Facebook and Google employ 70% of the people that are working in machine learning right now.
Oh my
And
God.
they're wise to do that. So the first thing is that it has gotten so much smarter. So that has changed a lot of the processes that we use tactically in terms of setting up ads and the way we tactically run ads. A lot of those best practices have changed because the platform's changed. And then on the other hand, you have, of course, everything with Cambridge Analytica and Facebook just being under huge scrutiny for, when it comes to data and really
I haven't
losing.
heard anything about that.
Yeah, losing the trust of, a huge portion of the world. And so because of that, they have had to change how their platform works to make it a better user experience. So things that used to work no longer work because the criteria that Facebook is using to rank us as advertisers in this auction is being weighted differently. And it's truly a consumer first approach now. So those are, I mean, everything's changed really in the last few years, honestly.
Yeah, it is. And it's fascinating to see those changes over time. I mean, just think how different Facebook is now from when it started, and think how much different just within the ad space it is. And then you mentioned local businesses, and we work with a lot of small businesses as well. What would you say is, if someone is looking to test out some campaigns in Facebook and test out some ads to get a handle on it and then eventually put more spend into it, what would you say is a good starting out budget to at least familiarize yourself and try to see some return from running ads?
I think $500 to $1,000 would hopefully get you proof of concept on a campaign. Like I would start, if you're a local business, with a lead gen campaign, something that's going to allow you to generate a lead, maybe even get people to come into your store or your business. And I think 500 to 1,000 would be enough to get tested and get proof of concept and to get you some experience.
And is that over 1 week, or how long would you be
Well,
running this in this very real scenario that's happening right now?
yeah. I mean, the testing process, it's hard to give you a length because it depends on how long it takes you to get to proof of concept. It could be one day, it could be never. And so, I would maybe commit to trying to possibly spend that over the course of 2 to 3 weeks, might be a good guideline.
Imagine you started your own podcast. You're growing your brand, sharing your expertise, maybe even your terrible puns, and meeting fascinating people. That is awesome. Now, imagine all the hours you've lost every week due to the podcast's demands. Not so awesome. I am your podcast producer. Email me at max@hippodirect.com. Let's switch gears a little bit. Let's get to The Mind of Molly. Oh, that sounds like a TV show or something.
I like it.
Yeah, we'll get into production on that. But let's go to inspiration and creativity. So think of how you stay creative, how you stay inspired. So my biggest question for you to start off here is, I mean, you're so knowledgeable about all things Facebook ads and all things media buying. How, besides just your own experience in trying out things, what other ways do you stay so in the know and really a thought leader in this world?
Spending a lot of time talking to people who are doing this, especially people that are, for example, running Facebook ads, but maybe in different industries or verticals than I am. And really just keeping an ongoing conversation, sharing information, sharing data so that I can gather information even outside of my own experiences. So I would say relationships first and foremost is where I learn outside of my own experiences. Also through teaching other people, like that's a big way that I learn is actually teaching others, which is interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I forget where I saw that somewhere recently that if you can teach it to somebody, that's when you really, really know it.
Yeah.
That's where it makes the difference. You mentioned other verticals. What other verticals come to mind? I know you know you're connected with so many amazing people, but if you think back to some recent conversations or people you've met with that are doing stuff that's a bit different from you that you actually learned a lot from or kind of freshened up your mind from, what comes to mind?
Whoa, there are a ton. I mean, I think of some of my students who one of them has this really cool pour over coffee company that's good for travelers and good for people who think coffee makers are gross because they have bacteria on them, like very innovative stuff like that. But I also think of, like working in the LASIK market, working with Boom, working with any local business, even like photographers, or one of my students sells fish accessories for your fish tanks,
Here we go. I knew it was only a
jewelry.
matter of time.
My student Jay, who has a brand called Prepared Fathers that helps fathers. His wife unfortunately passed away a few years ago, and so he teaches fathers how to become financially prepared if something like that happens. I mean, everyone from people that are selling and sharing products that they're passionate about that they've built, or selling information and services based off of their experiences. I mean, yeah, they're kind of endless.
I think that helps really put things in perspective because when you think about Facebook ads as a whole, I think if you just kind of look at it from a large scale, you just think of, okay, well, it's a bunch of companies paying money to get in front of people to sell their products or services. But when you really dive into it and realize that, this everybody's got their personal stories. There's stories behind all these businesses. There's a reason, and the things that they're offering can add value to people's lives. Like it's a whole another world there. There's so much more meaning than when you look at it surface level like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it is so much more than I don't know the way to put it, but it is such a huge opportunity. I mean, never have we lived in a time where you can reach such a specific person, right?
Right.
And today, right now, if you're just willing to spend a little bit of money, it's like we are so lucky as business owners and marketers, and I'm still blown away by it every day.
Yeah, like this literally was not possible even 20, a couple decades ago. So it's
Yeah.
it's it's crazy. In terms of creativity, so what do you do to stay creative?
Yeah, I mean, I believe that creativity is something that comes to you, especially when you are in like a clear, calm state. So, first and foremost is just take care of myself, make sure I get sleep, make sure I'm eating well, make sure that I'm treating myself well so that I can operate in from a great place. And then I put myself in environments and I make time for that creativity to happen. And that's different for everybody. But for me, a lot of it is spending time in nature, away from devices, making sure I'm, scheduling calls and time to talk with my team or friends that stimulate me and are, great to sort of run ideas by and build project ideas with. So, it's kind of first step, just taking care of myself. Second step, just making space for that to happen.
There's kind of this parallel or paradox between discipline and creativity that keeps coming up in this topic, in that you really need to be disciplined with yourself in order to allow those creative moments to happen, like in order to allow time to get out into nature and or to read a book or do whatever you need to do to calm your head. What are the ways that you stay disciplined in that sense? Like, are there apps you use, or are there kind of guidelines you put for yourself?
Yeah, I do use the app Calm for meditation.
Ah,
Um,
I had a feeling when you mentioned calm that might come up.
Yeah, I also, this is a big reason that I moved to Amsterdam last year was I was looking for some more balance and I would say just like quiet time. So it's nice because I'm 6 hours ahead of Eastern time. So most of my morning now, I actually don't wake up and jump right into work, which, completely ruins your nervous system after a while. So for me, like waking up slowly, reading or doing something just to like get my mind going and just trying to stay in like an easy calm place and not a place of stress and building my life around that. I mean, obviously there are going to be things that stress us out. There are things we have to do, right? I'm not saying that we're all going to live in this perfect world. It's all about balance, but just being
Mhm.
very intentional about that and looking like measuring like what does stress me out or what causes X result and how can I build this so that that isn't the case while also still staying flexible. That's a huge value of mine is like we can plan and plan, but stuff's gonna come up. It's always gonna come up. And so if you aren't flexible, then that causes you not to live as much in the moment. And if you're living in the moment, like that's really where clarity comes from.
Well said.
And
Beautifully said.
creativity, like that's when
Ah,
creativity can sort of find you, right?
right.
If you think of it that way. So
Yeah, and I don't think anybody blames you for moving to Amsterdam. I mean, anybody who's ever been, like, it's such a beautiful place. Certainly can find balance there. But there are plenty of places in the world you can find balance and kind of structure your life
yeah, and it's
differently.
different for everybody.
Right. But what for you personally, what ultimately made Amsterdam light up on the map and said, ding, 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 this is where I want to go? I Kentucky, Texas, Holland, like what, or
Yeah,
Netherlands.
well, yeah, I mean, honestly, I came here to visit for 3 days, or I'm sorry, I was going to stay for 3 months. And I just had visited here a few times and I felt really good here. I just felt like a good version of myself. And I think a lot of factors go into that. And I agree, it is so different for everybody, but it just added up for me. And, a lot of it is having the city energy, but also this is a very quiet city. It's very eco-friendly. People work together. This is a very collective environment. I operate best in those environments versus more like individualistic societies, which again, everybody operates differently. And so also this is one of the tech hubs in Europe. So this has been great for meeting
Right.
people and like-minded people. And, the food quality here is great. There are lots of reasons I decided to stay, and most of it just quality of life and access to Europe in general, which is a place that, I've always felt really good in.
Well, it sounds like you just hate it there. So I'm sorry that you're having such a terrible time.
It
So
sucks.
yeah, yeah, you heard it here first. I love the line you said that you just felt really good there, and I think more people should think that way. If there's somewhere that you've ever been and just loved it so much and want to keep going back to it, maybe it's worth living there for a little while.
Yeah, and I think it's like, we're quick to add labels to things, or I wouldn't even call them labels, but say like, I'm a city person, or I'm a country person, or I like the mountains, or I like the beach. And like,
Right.
it's good to like kind of know preferences, but like try to base things like that a little bit more off of like how you feel there, because there are factors that aren't on your checklist.
Right.
And I have made, actually between Austin and Amsterdam, I lived in Colorado for 2 years, in Telluride, Colorado, Western Colorado. I really needed peace at that time in my life and kind of healing and quiet. And it was lovely. But I did realize that even though I love the mountains, I also, living in a town of 1,000 people, it's like, I just right now in my life require, more access to shops and people and things like that.
Right.
And so it's good to know that
I
about
can
yourself.
imagine.
And it also changes, like as you evolve, it changes.
Let's get to a fan favorite segment called the Wild Business Shout Out of the Week.
The Wild Business Shout Out of the Week.
Wild Business Shout Out. That was a delayed woo. Wild Business Shout Out of the Week. So this is where we talk about a recent brand or campaign that caught your attention. And speaking of Amsterdam, so we won't dive into it. It's obviously a very unfortunate situation, but a certain virus who must not be named is going around. And on the more positive side of that, you've noticed that a lot of local businesses in Amsterdam are doing very, very cool things. And really, it's in the creative marketing space to, survive and thrive in the circumstances. You mind sharing some of that?
Yeah, so I live right in the center of town. And if you've ever been here, it's a very walkable, bikeable city. And so this whole thing with COVID is like very in your face here, because there are thousands of shops and a lot of them are closed, or it's just different. But it's been amazing to see how businesses across the globe and across all markets are adapting. And I think that is what marketing is, especially digital marketing is like, and business is the ability to continue to adapt to meet the needs of your audience and make the best offer for them, just to tie back to the beginning of the episode. And these are some really simple examples, but think about how this relates to your business. If it's an online business, it's, the Italian restaurant down the street that's normally white tablecloth. Now they've got this big refrigerator system in the front of their store. They've got prepackaged meals that they're selling. The coffee shop is now got the register at the front door doing to-go coffee in a self-distancing way. Obviously, you guys are seeing across the globe people doing takeout and Uber Eats, and restaurants are adapting. All businesses almost are adapting to this certain scenario. I mean, there are a few restaurants that have even gone old school and like dropping flyers in my mailbox with, nicely written letters and their menu and ways to order from them. And I think it's really simple, but it's such a great reminder of just what it means to be a business owner or a marketer or both. Like, it's the ability to adapt, and it's really cool to watch. And like I said, almost every business is having to do it. Like the LASIK project that I'm working on, we're revolutionizing that industry now because their clinics are closed, right? Their offices are closed. So now we're introducing virtual consultations. So it's like even businesses like that are evolving and are adapting. And I just challenge you to stay in that mindset. And I think you'll have a really fun career and doing this stuff.
Yeah. Well, at the time of this recording, it is certainly putting all kinds of businesses to the test. And it is amazing when you look at how creative people have been and how adaptive they've been, to use your word. By the way, I think there should be a college course to go along with the MySpace course. There should be an adaptive marketing course, because it really is. That's so true. You need to adapt and pivot so much. And it's just, when your back is up against a wall like this, you need to come up with some new ideas. And so I appreciate you sharing some of the examples from Amsterdam.
Of course.
So let's get to the unusual. So this is pet peeves, quirks, and weird talents. So you would never guess, but what is your biggest pet peeve?
Ooh. I would say my biggest pet peeve is just general rudeness to strangers.
Why is that?
People
No, I'm
are
just
just
kidding.
generally rude to one another.
Yeah. God, you're just such a bad person. Yeah, it's not fun. How about quirks? So is there something that your friends or family or somebody calls you out on that's a little bit quirky about your personality?
Yeah, there are lots of them.
You're like, I
I
have to
would,
pick one.
yeah, I would say I'm a very weird person. Probably,
Sweet.
like I definitely communicate best audibly, like not necessarily as much written, even though I like doing that. So that tends to lead to like lots of weird noises and like voices and like who knows. So people that I talk to regularly are always like, "What? Did you just make that noise?"
What are these like recurring weird voices you're talking about, or is this like just you'll start speaking in a different way without even realizing?
Kind of both.
Okay. All right. Can you,
Yeah.
for the rest of the
A
interview,
lot of
talk?
it is like a lot of it is like adding animations to conversation, I guess is a good way to put it. So even like, woo, or,
Yeah,
even
I did
something
notice
like
that.
that, just like adding some like verbal emojis is very fun for me, especially when we all are remote, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that verbal emoji. I mean, emojis keep getting more popular. Maybe the verbal side needs to get more popular as well. All right,
Yeah.
you're leading the charge in that. How about weird talents? Is there something that has absolutely no impact on your business or ad spend, but you're really good at it? Like it could be like a weird, like could be weird voices. No, it could be like a memory trick or something like around the house or something.
Mm. That's a tough one.
Thank you. I got one in there.
I would say maybe soccer. Like I'm pretty good at soccer. I don't know if that's weird enough for you, but
I mean, it is the world's most popular sport. So, but
yeah, there you
no.
go.
Do you still play?
I do just recreationally, but
Okay.
yeah,
Well,
yeah, it's a good outlet.
it definitely is. Let's wrap up with some rapid fire Q&A. You ready for it?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Just do it, Nike. All right, let's get wild. What is your favorite cocktail?
French 75.
Oh my, I'm not even familiar. Okay, I'll take your word for it. Um, what was your favorite way to spend your free time in Danville, Kentucky?
Riding my bike.
I bet that applies to Amsterdam as well.
Yes.
And was your favorite part of living in Austin?
The people.
What is your favorite food or treat that you've had in Amsterdam?
Ooh, I mean, any of the pancakes or waffles are just out of this world. Also, the frites, the fries, and of course, the cheese.
We're gonna have a list of like 17 things here.
Yeah, I could keep going.
And if there was one movie you had to watch on repeat for the rest of your life, what would that be?
Ooh, weirdly enough, I don't really watch movies. I've only seen like 20 in my life.
Oh, okay. Well, which of those
um,
20 was your most favorite?
Either Angels and Demons, and also the book, and or It's a Wonderful Life.
Oh, I never heard of that. I've definitely heard of that.
Definitely. Okay.
All right. All right. Well, Molly, thank you so much. Really appreciate your deep dive into Facebook ads and your background, everything from alcohol to, playing this new sport called soccer. So thanks for coming on. Where is the best place that people can connect with you?
Yeah, check me out on Instagram at Molly Pittman Digital. Also, I have a Facebook brand page, Molly Pittman, and you can go to smartmarketer.com, which is the company that I'm the CEO of. So check us out there.
Perfect. And last thing here, final thoughts, stage is yours. It could be a quote or a weird voice, whatever you want. Send us off here.
Um, honestly, I don't know if it's a quote or a weird voice, but just thank you guys for listening. And this was fun. And Max, you're hilarious. So thanks for bringing the entertainment and thanks for spending your time with me. And hopefully this was helpful. And go out there and do stuff.
Of course. Well, thank you so much. Your check is in the mail for the compliment, and we'll catch up with you soon.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Molly, for being hilarious and sharing your passion for weird voices. And thank you, wild listeners, for tuning into another episode. If you want to hear more wild stories like this one, make sure to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite app and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. You can also check us out on Good Pods, where you can find all the podcasts your friends, family, and anyone else you're connected with are listening to. You can also dive into our marketing and business growth resources at hippodirect.com/blog and hippodirect.com/newsletter. That newsletter is the Hippo Digest, and it's your place for wild marketing ideas every single week. And of course, last but certainly not least, come say hey on your favorite social media platforms at the handles Hippo Direct and Max Branstetter. Until next time, let your business run wild.
Bring on the bongos!